the sanctions regime to counter the threat from Al-Qaeda and Taliban introduced by the Security Council has always suffered, particularly recently, from challenges to its legitimacy. And in many ways, the Security Council has tried to counter those challenges to its legitimacy by introducing new mechanisms, that would satisfy the requirements that are generally out there in the courts for better notification, better information to the people who are on the list, and their right to challenge their listing, their right to say, well, you've got the wrong person, or the reasons you give are not adequate, or they're wrong, or whatever. And the Council, of course, isn't a judicial process, but it would like, in some ways, to emulate, or to provide some equivalence to judicial process. And it's introduced this Office of the Ombudsperson, where there's a single individual who is charged to look into cases where a petitioner has come and asked her to do so, to find out the facts, to approach member states, and to delve into the sort of background reasons for why somebody has been added to the list, and then present her arguments and her observations to the Security Council Committee which deals with these issues, so that they can come to a more reasoned and better informed decision about whether to maintain the listing or not, whether to indeed agree that the petitioner has reasons to be removed from the list, or whether in fact the reasons he put forward are not sufficient to overturn the reasons for his listing. So the Ombudsperson represents a very real and potentially very powerful tool by the Security Council to introduce better fairness, or due process, if you want to call it that, into its procedures. I found it very, very good too. I mean, the people there were extremely interesting. There was a mixture of academics and policymakers, and they were all at a high level, and so that we were able to have a really good and informed discussion. And I think it's very useful for us on the inside, if you like, to see what the main issues are on the outside, because very often, like anything where bureaucracy gets sort of more and more involved in looking at its own neighbour and less aware of the rest of the world. It's very useful sometimes to have these academic inputs, and useful too, I would have thought, for the academics to understand more about what's going on within the policy circle. So I found it a very rewarding experience.